Welcome to Shrewsbury Public Access, Channel 57. This program is being presented by the Shrewsbury Government Access. And my name is Ara Arisian Sr., and I am the moderator of this program. And seated in the studio are Dan Morgado, our town manager, Tom Rooney, who is a longtime resident and active member of the community, a past president of the Colonial Chapter of the Shrewsbury AARP, and also past president of the Shrewsbury Senior Club. Kathleen Quinn Copeland, a freelance writer and also a town member, a member of the town meeting, and that's what I was trying to search for. And then we've got Jim Morgan, who, as you all know, is the editor of the Shrewsbury Chronicle. Okay. Now, the intent of this particular program is an initial program to open up a dialogue with our town manager, a give and take, if you will. And if you will notice, at the beginning of the program, there was an absence of a specific name for this program. And in the past week, we had a meeting wherein we discussed several things, including the name of the program. And whatever name came up fell by the roadside. And then somebody made the suggestion, since this is a dialogue between the community and our town manager, this would be a significant but very, very good way of starting things by asking you, our viewers, to consider a name and then call it in to the studio. The number is on the screen, 841-8650. And if you have a name to suggest, call it in and give it to us for consideration. We would welcome your calls in that regard. Now, let's get on with the program. And Dan, there's been a bit of a concern expressed about defibrillators. A defibrillator is a device that gives a electric shock to someone that has been in cardiac arrest. I believe it was Paul Weaver, a member of the community, that suggested that the first responders to such a case of cardiac arrest should have these defibrillators in the police cruisers and what else have you. On the other hand, concern was raised, concern about money, and yet you know and I know that you can't put a dollar value on a person's life. There was also concern about usage. Now, what are your thoughts and feelings on this?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for hosting this program and for the people at Shrewsbury Public Access for coming out and organizing and doing the work behind the scenes. The defibrillator issue isn't a new issue. I've been manager since October of '97, and the issue was being pressed at that time by a resident. And it's something that my office has had under review since that period of time. When I came to Shrewsbury, my first emphasis in the EMS area was to get our contract with AMR renewed. We had a contract that was set to expire June of '99.
AMR, give them the name.
American Medical Response.
Right.
They provide paramedic level service, or ALS service, to our residents via a contract with the town at no cost. Basically, we provide them the facility on Harrington Avenue to locate their ambulance unit, and we handle, obviously the dispatch. We receive the 911 call, and they dispatch their unit. We back them up with our first responder response in the form of our police department, but more practically with our fire engines. We run units out of all our firemen as all our policemen are first responders. And last year, for instance, actually in 1997, the fire department did, I think, over 1,100 first responder responses. My emphasis was to get that contract renewed. The contract is now renewed for a 3-year period. It is still an ALS truck, and it is still at no cost to the town. Unlike the renewal contracts that are currently being discussed and reviewed in communities surrounding Shrewsbury who have a privatized ambulance service. These communities have BLS service, and in some instances, they're actually having to pay some degree of a stipend,
BLS?
basic life support.
Okay.
The instances, our ALS unit is equipped with 2 paramedics, obviously, and with a defibrillator unit. So the town does have access to that type of service. It is a service that is used less than 1% of the time. But of course, it is an important service because you're right, how can you place the value on a human life? What I've suggested to Mr. Weaver and other people that have spoken to me is this is something that is under review. We're looking at the pros and cons of putting the units, how would we deploy the units. The current internal discussion centers on putting these units on a fire apparatus as opposed to police cruisers. And that's something that we'll continue to work with in the area of training, use protocols, and interacting with our various members of our public safety departments, so that if we do determine to deploy defibrillators, it'll be done properly. It'll be done with the proper level of training, with the proper level of coordination with our ambulance provider.
Question?
Yeah, actually, I mean, are you inclined to believe that the service is one that the town should provide, and it's more a question of how the town would organize providing the services, or could it still be so difficult financially that it may be impossible to do?
I don't view it as much as a financial issue as one as a coordination and training, and making sure that I'm a pretty cautious person, and before I actually go to town meeting, went to the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, this is something that we need to do, I like to make sure I have everything lined up. I don't like surprises. I don't come in with half-baked ideas. And if I can present something, I want to be able to follow through. I don't present something, propose something, and then bail out of it because I failed to look at all of the future ramifications.
Great. May I just follow up?
Yes.
How does the chief or the fire department rank and file feel about the issue? Are there any union questions at all?
Well, we haven't formally discussed this with the union. There have been some informal discussions, but nothing formal has been proposed. We haven't made a proposal to the union as to how we would see the units employed in the first responder service delivery system. Before we would put these units into use, obviously we'd have to talk and meet our obligations under Chapter 150E, which is a collective bargaining statute.
Thank you.
Why would the unions have an input on this, just out of curiosity? It might sound naive, but where do they come in? Where do they fit into the
Well,
picture?
part of good labor management relations is that before you do something that puts any employee into a situation where there's been a change in the way procedures have been done previously, it's good practice to sit down and talk to labor and work out any questions or concerns, if any, before making the implementation. I think to implement and then to get into discussion of why something was done or why it could have been done better. Again, part of my practice is not to take a unilateral action. If it's something that I feel that needs to be reviewed and discussed and implemented in a more reserved manner. Again, the defibrillator unit is available to the residents of this community. It's on a paramedic ALS level truck, which provides, with the exception of Worcester, the highest level of emergency medical services in the area.
Tom?
Two of the seniors of the community, a male and a female, who are very concerned about these units. In fact, they wrote letters to the editor in the various newspapers and also spoke at some of the senior meetings and everything. Sadly, they have passed away. So, but they were really concerned about this type of unit being installed. But I think I've read various articles about them and everything else, and like anything else, there's a pro and a con. And but I would think that if they can straighten out about as far as the liability concerned, as far as the police officers handling these, and then I think it would be very good for the town and especially for the seniors.
Well, again, our internal review indicates that we would make the deployment through the fire department, not the police department.
Oh, all right.
Okay, because again, the fire responds on the EMS emergency medical service system in their role as first responders. In some instances, they would be on the scene earlier than the ambulance. There would also be the situation, as pointed out by Mr. Weaver, that if our ALS truck was out of town, the backup unit was a BLS truck, it's possible that would not be equipped with the unit. So I think it's an issue that's valid. I think it's an issue that needs to be looked at, and I tried to communicate that to concerned persons, the two people that you mentioned, and now Mr. Weaver, and say I just want to make sure that before I recommend something, it's something that we can follow through on. And again, my initial interest and my initial priority was to get that contract renewed.
On to a different sort of an emergency. We're in the countdown now to the year 2000. And how prepared is the town for Y2K as far as its information, communication systems? And do we have anything set up in place in case emergencies should happen? Is the police department prepared in case there's elevators that are stopped or people are trapped in their ATMs or all these things that some people say will happen and some people won't? How prepared are we as a town?
As part of the fiscal 2000 budget filing, my budget message, I address Y2000 compliance. As part of the budget review process with each department, we've looked at how that department is regarding Y2K compliance. We think we're in pretty good shape. There is some concern with our water system. We have a water treatment plant which was constructed in 1990, 1992. There was a reworking of it a few years later. That seems to be the time where it's sort of iffy. You know, it seems like a lot of the stuff purchased 95, 96, 97 to the present's okay. We've just signed a contract with Camp Dresser and McGee to look at the entire water treatment and water distribution system to make sure that wherever possible, if there is any malfunction, it will be avoided. The other departments have been looking at it. They're really not as critical as you would get with your water, sewer, certainly electricity. We are concerned about dispatch area, certainly how burglar alarms may suddenly be tripped. So that we are making plans to have extra personnel on duty in those critical departments on January 1st or the times leading up to January 1st, so that if systems do fail, we have personnel in place to take whatever manual actions required. Our computer system, our main MIS backbone, was recently acquired. It was acquired in 1997 or during that period of time. So we're very confident that that'll survive any of the Y2K bugs. Now, when you get into issues like elevators, alarm systems, traffic lights, that's when we'll have extra personnel on duty, so that if we have to put people out directing traffic or doing whatever we have to do, we'll be in that situation. That's something I'm sure as we ramp up to it, I'm sure we'll be getting more help and assistance from the state government and also from the industry, giving us little pointers on what to look for and what not to look for. For instance, the city of Newton has people standing by in all their public buildings to help people get in and out of the building because they're concerned about elevators malfunctioning. We have about a half dozen elevators. Part of the inspection process will be reviewing each of those units. But who knows? You know, I could be sitting here January 2nd looking pretty dumb. Or we could say, hey, it was no big deal, we had it covered. What's the correct, you know, one of the issues you have in this business always, what's the correct level of response? Because if you over-respond, you're criticized. If you under-respond, you're criticized. So a lot of people in my business spend a great deal of time fretting over what's the proper level of alarm to sound on something.
Jim, before you jump in, I want to say this to you, Dan. In the short period of time we've known each other, I want the people to know that I've found you to be competent and confident. And those are two key factors.
Some people say it's cocky, frankly.
I'd like to echo that and also express the appreciation of the seniors in town, the various organizations that have been connected with, to our town manager for the excellent job he has done as far as seeing the fruition of the senior center.
How's that going?
It's been, the bid has been granted to the Marciello Construction Company, $1,804,300. And there are a few little odds and ends I think Dan can touch on as far as, but I think within 30 days we should have the contract signed.
That's right.
And ready for construction.
That's right. And I was talking to Mr. Marciello last night, and he's very excited about, he's a local company, and they're very proud of the fact that they're going to be building this facility. The budget's tight, but we think we can do it within the allocation. We do have a problem with HVAC bids. We're going to have to rebid the HVAC, and that's the one area of concern.
HVAC.
Heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. We carried an allowance of $182,500 for that, and we're sort of hoping the rebid will be at that number or below. So We're pleased. We had really a good meeting yesterday afternoon. A lot of pressure has been on the building committee throughout this entire process. Whenever you go to town meeting, you get your allocation, and then you try to deliver the product. There's always a lot of pressure on the building committee, and a lot of pressure on the architectural firm, because you're really taking a guess, and particularly in a very volatile market. You could run at risk. We were very fortunate to have more interest in this bid than I would have ever imagined. We had, I think, well over 100 sub-bidders. John Concordia, our chairman, opened and read sub-bids a couple of weeks ago for well over, I think, an hour and a half. General bidders, I didn't get the final count, but I think we did at least 8 to 12. Did you get that number?
13.
13. And in my wildest dreams, I was hoping for 8. So we did well.
Dan, we're going to take a break right now. This message for you.
Dan, I just want to say thank you and express my deep appreciation for all the leadership you've provided to our community over your career here. As you know, we started 20 years ago together. I've got a little longer to go, but your support of our schools, especially through your leadership to improve our infrastructure, several excellent building projects that have created great learning spaces for our kids, and all the work you've done to prioritize the funding of education wherever possible to make sure a very high-growth school district received the resources it needed to continue to provide a high quality of life in our community. You're a well-educated and thoughtful, wise leader. I've always enjoyed meetings with you because of I learn something every time that I interact with you, whether that's in a larger group or when we're able to meet one-on-one or in a smaller group. Your sense of history, your sense of leadership of municipalities and organizations have influenced me and will continue to for the rest of my career. So thank you for all you've done for Shrewsbury, especially for its school children. Wish you certainly the best for you and your family in your retirement, and we really appreciate your service. Our town is a better place because of you. Thank you.
Hi Dan, just wanted to wish you a very happy congratulations on your retirement. Wishing you many years of happiness and good health, and I really wanted to just thank you for all your mentorship and teachings on the town manager level and things in life, and wish you all the best and enjoy this summer coming up and the rest of the years to come. Thank you so much.
Good luck in your retirement, and I just want to say thank you for all that you've done, not only for the town, but also certainly on the school side. You have a long legacy of accomplishments, especially with the school construction from the new high school to the Oak Middle School, Parker Road, Sherwood Middle, very concrete, tangible demonstrations of your leadership and emphasis on education. And I know that the school department enjoys a very positive reputation, and that is in large part to your leadership in both not only the capital side but also in support of the annual operating budgets through some very difficult times like the Great Recession and whatnot. So thank you for that, and I hope that you do have time to step it back a little bit and maybe get back on the bike or running or both, and have a few more evenings at home with your wife, and that everything will be A-okay in your retirement years, and look forward to seeing you around town in a different capacity. So good luck, Dan. Thank you.
Dan, just wanted to say congratulations on your retirement, and hope your endeavors work out well for you, whatever you do. As you know, I came here, things were looking dark. Everything seems to be brighter now that I met you, and good luck in everything you do. Thank you, and I enjoyed working with you for the 2 years. Take care. Thank you.
Hi, Dan. I want to say that it's been a tremendous honor and pleasure to work with you. Back when I used to be a police officer, we used to have a saying. It said, if you trust someone, you'd go through any door with them. And there's not a door here I wouldn't go through with you or for you. Thank you very much for all your help and all your leadership.
Hey, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure working for a gentleman like you. I wish you well in everything you do from here on out.
Hey, Dan, happy retirement. Save a trip to the treasurer's office. Pay your bills online. Have a great retirement. Bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Happy
Thank
retirement.
you. Enjoy.
Happy retirement, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan. Good luck.
See you at the park.
See you at the park.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for such a great job that you've done here in Shrewsbury. I've really enjoyed the more than 13 years that I've worked with you. You've been a mentor and really amazing to work with. You've left an indelible mark on this community that I believe will be felt for decades to come, and I wish you all the best in your retirement.
Cynthia and I thought it would only be appropriate to sit here in the drop-in lounge in the beautiful senior center that you helped make a reality for the seniors in Shrewsbury, and now that you're one of them. So we just wanted to thank you for all the support you've given us over the 20 years that you've been here. And I guess Cynthia and I are kind of some of the ones, the very few that were here when you started.
Right.
So I'll turn it over to Cynthia for a minute.
Dan is Dan's like a class act. Dan plays by the books. He's straight up. He's not looking for any favors, and you're like a great role model. You know, be nice to see more people in higher positions. That take their job serious and don't look for special favors.
Very ethical,
And I just look at you, I see you as a very fair and honest person. In the world that we live in today, we need more role models like yourself.
We need more Dans.
Dan, congratulations on your retirement. I just want to say in the 5 years I've been here, I've learned something new from you every single day. And I consider it an honor to have gotten to work with you and for you. In these 5 years, I've constructed a small list of my favorite Danisms, and I'd like to just share a couple. We all know A-OK. No hits, no runs, no errors. We're all God's children. Hi, I'm Dan Morgado. Can I help you? And the famous, please advise. We all know 2022 or bust. Oh, jingles. And today's plan of attack. Dan, today's plan of attack for you is enjoy every single minute of your retirement. Thank you for everything. Best wishes.
Hey Dan, it's Jack, and I'm on the bridge here. Wanted to say thank you to you as both a town resident and as a former employee. Had a great time working with you over the years. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your integrity and everything you brought to the town. And I'm going to give you one word of advice now. Go play with the grandchildren.
Hi, Dan. Congrats on your retirement. I know that we haven't known each other for a long time. I think it's about 2 months now. But I just want to say in the short 2 months, I've learned a lot from you. I wish you'd stick around a little bit longer so I could learn some more. But I understand that you are at the end and you're going to sit in your nice new beach chairs and relax for the rest of the summer. But I do want to say that I did, as you know, grow up in Shrewsbury, and when I moved away, I missed it a lot. It was a great town to grow up in, and now that I'm here, I realize that a big part of that was because of the work that you put in. So I want to say thank you for all of your hard work and your dedication and going above and beyond, and enjoy your retirement.
Dan, congratulations on your retirement. Hopefully it's a very many years of relaxation and enjoyment. I want to thank you for bringing me into the town of Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury was the only town I would have ever thought about being a municipal employee to. Now being on both sides of the table, the culture that you had in the town was impeccable. Thoroughly enjoyed working here, both when I was on the private side and now on the public side. Enjoy your retirement. Thanks.
On behalf of all of your friends here at SMC, we want to wish you a very happy retirement and best of luck with any future endeavors. It's been a pleasure the past 18 years working on Ask the Manager with you. We are going to miss you. So in memory of you, we hired an artist to paint your portrait on our wall.
Hello, Dan. I want to wish you a happy retirement. It has been great working with you throughout these years. And I know we're going to miss you, but I know I'm going to see you around, and we're going to bike together, and we'll continue to have fun and stay in touch. Wish you the best. Enjoy your retirement.
Dan, we want to wish you the very best in your retirement. We are so grateful for the guidance and the support that you have given the library. When we look around this wonderful building, we know it would not have been possible without all of your help. We hope that you get time now that you are going into retirement to enjoy the library more. And we just want you to feel proud when you walk in here that you were a big part of it. So with all of the library staff, we're here to say, best wishes!
We're back, and let's get back onto the subject of the senior center. I just want to make one comment. I think that aesthetically speaking, it's going to be nestled in that little group of buildings there, and it'll look very, very nice. And I'm surprised at the number of bids, frankly. I really am.
Yeah, we're pleased with that.
Yes.
Very pleased.
Jim?
Yeah, well, we were talking a little bit in the break, and now that the bid's approved, sort of, where do you go from here? And you would express some concerns about getting going.
Right. Well, again, we need to get the HV, heating, ventilating, air conditioning number nailed down, and then start the site work. If there's any exposure in any project that'll really destroy your budget is in the site work. You get into latent conditions, you know above the ground pretty much what you got.
Mm-hmm.
You know how big it's going to be, bricks, the finishes, how big the roof's going to be. But underground, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. Although we did borings out there, we'll certainly feel better once the steel starts going up.
Now, does this plan call now for blasting, or is it expected that the ground underneath is soft?
No, everything, there's not even a blasting allotment number in the bid. We know there's no serious ledge out there. If there's a problem, it would be soft soils, wet soils. When they put the addition onto the municipal center, that was one of the problems they had. They had to, in fact, the guys had to come back for town meeting a couple of times, 1 or 2 times for money, because they got into poor soil conditions. Once we get out of the ground, then we'll know the budget's good.
And speaking of construction, last night there was a cost estimate given for the proposed new high school, and I'm wondering, due to the fact that a number of people seem to be surprised regarding the actual site development costs, whether this might, if the town meeting did approve it and if the townwide vote did approve the proposal, whether this would push back the actual completion date of the school.
No, it would not. We're still talking about a 30-month construction period. We knew going into this project, after selecting the location on Holden Street, that site development would be a significant portion of the work being done. Certainly the number of, I think site costs are around $10 million. Personally, I think it's about $2 million higher than I ever wanted to see. I did not want to see us putting that kind of money. If we want to spend that kind of money, I want to put it into the building as opposed to moving dirt around and blasting rock and moving rock. Unfortunately, that's the number. Last night, the building committee spent a lot of time talking about how can we bring the site cost number down. We talked about changing the elevation of the road, going from an 8% to a 9% grade, reducing the width of the road, and doing some other things. And we pretty much rejected those, saying that we know it's 8% slope is steep enough. The incremental value of making it a steeper, narrower access road, we didn't think in the long run would prove to be satisfactory for the project. The project is right now, it's hovering, as far as additional appropriation is concerned, between $54.5 up to maybe $55.5 million. Right now, the building committee members are looking at all the data they were given last night. We have a meeting at 5:45 Monday night, this coming Monday night, where we're going to set the budget. At that point in time, we have a report it's in draft form right now. It'll be mailed to the town meeting members late next week, and also available to the public at large, which will outline the budget for the project and the financing scheme that we're going to be selecting for it. Unfortunately, these large facilities, the price tags are extraordinary when you consider the cost of previous construction that you might have had in this community. And the decision will have to be made by every town meeting member and then by every voter as to whether or not they feel the type of investment that this facility is going to require is something that they want to see in this community.
Now, there were substantial off-site costs that were going to be incurred as well, and
That's
Mike
correct.
Pagano had said he would try and get through the Department of Education.
right.
Has any decision been made on that, or do we expect one soon?
Back on January 12th, we had some preliminary discussions with the SBAB people that were in Shrewsbury. The SBAB, we have to make a pitch to them, demonstrate that the off-site work really is cheaper than if we did the work on-site. And that's part of the
water and
presentation.
sewer connections.
Water and sewer. Now, one of the advantages of doing this project is we have about $2 million in off-site work being done. As far as the sewer side goes, only $400,000 of that is attributed to the high school. So we're going to be making an investment of about $1 million in the infrastructure in that area, basically to improve the public works. And that is a side benefit of this project, because now a new section of town will now have access to sewerage that they had not had previously. And for the residents of Cypress Avenue, they're now going to get a much improved water pressure. Currently, they're serviced off a small booster station at Cypress Avenue. We're now planning on, in order to service the water at the school site, connecting to the high-pressure zone on Browning Street, the Browning Street pump station, and running it down Gulf Street up to Cypress. So a side benefit of the new school would be an improvement of the public works infrastructure in this area.
Now, when you, on the approach roadway, which I think from Holden Street to the site where the school is going to be, is that close to half a mile?
Yes.
And everybody always talks about 8% grades, which I think when you just talk about doesn't sound like much, but in fact is quite a bit. Could you relate that to something that you could understand? Is there a street in town that would be commonly known that has that kind of grade?
That's an excellent question. And last night, a member of the building committee asked that question and said, we should find out what the grade is, for instance, on Oak Street heading down to Route 9. To give people a frame of reference. That's an excellent point. Right at the moment, I don't know. I know what a 10% grade is. A 10% grade is, where Fox Run 3 is? That street going up the hill
near
across from the highway
municipal
barn?
garage, right?
Right. I know that's a 10% grade.
Wow.
I believe Pagano wanted to keep it to the 8% grade because that's the subdivision code for the town. Is that correct?
Actually, it's 10%.
10% is the 10.
But and when we sketched this out for him, the committee said we don't want 10%. We want 8% because we're talking about buses, rear-wheel drive. Younger drivers, and a situation where there's a lot of traffic in and out. So we want a little wider road. Again, for the value of making it smaller and steeper, we just didn't see the value was there when you consider that we're paying 36% of the cost. I think the number's big. It's a large number, and people are going to have to decide if they really think this is an investment that they want to make. And if they don't, then obviously that's their right. This is democracy, and we're bringing forward the best possible project we could.
Tom, I believe you had a question, and I've got a rider for that particular question. You want to ask your question?
The question about the new homes, there's something like 264 new homes were built last year in town, and the question has come up, the ratio, the number of children that would result going into the schools in the Shrewsbury school system. They throw out a figure, it's been thrown out 2.5 children per household, and there was a survey made down in Westboro, and they came up with a lot less, 0.85 per house built. So that is something that should be kind of explored, and I contacted the Superintendent Ment, to see if he could get a hold of that survey from Westboro and see if he could come up with a figure as far as the number of pupils per houses built in town.
Well, again, our projections aren't based on new homes construction. Our numbers are based on live births and survival rates. For instance, 440 births translates into how many kindergartens. We work strictly off of the trends, off of studies of actual numbers. We have not hazarded to guess how many new homes are going to be built and how many kids are going to be contributed to that. We know that there are 4,200 students in the system right now. I think about 8 or 9 years ago, I think there were 3,200. We feel enrollments are going to go up.
Well, Tom, Dan, all of you, we'll have to carry this on at another time. I'm sorry, I've got to wrap it up. In the meantime, I want the folks to remember what I said in the beginning. The intent of this program, which is the initial program, is to have a dialogue. This is Dan's idea, and it's a very good idea, to have a dialogue with the community at large. Let me repeat again, we didn't have a name for this program. Therefore, to create a dialogue, join us. It's a small step, but a significant one. Call in your names. if you have a suggestion, call it to the number on the screen. In the meantime, thank you.
Thank you.
For your time and for your views. Tom, Kathleen, Jim, thanks for joining me. To our viewers, thanks for joining us. See you the next time. Welcome to Ask the Manager. This presentation is by Shrewsbury Government Access Production, and Asking the Manager are Eric Rodell, senior at the Shrewsbury High School, Eileen Terrell, who is a former member of the Shrewsbury School Committee, Jim Morgan, he's the publisher and editor of the Shrewsbury Chronicle, and Viola Jefferson, who is a former member of the Shrewsbury Finance Committee. Welcome to you all. Now, the matter of the new Shrewsbury High School has been settled. The members of the town committee gave it a strong vote of support, followed by the voters in a recent election who approved the issue by a 2-to-1 margin. And Dan, I'm sure you're pleased with the results, but my question to you is, are you surprised by the strong support?
Well, I think one of the first things they teach you in this business is not to be surprised by anything. And obviously we're very...
I'll buy that.
We're very pleased with the results. We feel that we were able to put together a project in a relatively short period of time. If you really trace the chronology of this project, we were able to put the project together in a relatively quick period of time that I think people found to be satisfactory. Certainly not perfect, but satisfactory based upon, I think, the very pressing need facing this community. And they voted accordingly. I sort of view the vote as just a step that was approved. I think the real work's going to begin now when we begin construction of this project, really starting with this evening's meeting of the building committee, where we need to get the plans and specifications submitted to Department of Education by June 1st, finish the specifications, get the project out to bid November and December of this year, and a year from now have the project under active construction. That's really where the real work's going to start here, because we must bring the project in on time, we must bring the project in under budget, and that's what we're going to be doing for this project. So, we appreciate greatly those that voted for the project, and we also appreciate those people that did not support the project, because we knew that there's some really valid concerns that were expressed by many of our residents about the project, and as a member of the building committee and as town manager, I hear those concerns, and we're going to try and react to them as best we can, so that when the project is, we have the grand opening, so to speak, overwhelming majority of the residents are going to feel that, yes, this is the right project at the right time for the right purpose, and that's really our intent.
I think I agree with you that the town has come out in support of all the information that's been given to them. I think they truly believe that we have an issue here in town of overcrowding, of straining of resources, particularly with the schools. So I think that the town has finally seen that this is an important thing to do for the students. But I also believe that students' education has become a very important aspect, focus for this town, that education in general has changed, and I think the town has begun to recognize that and to understand what the support for that education change is about.
What is the change you're making reference to? Do you have any specifics?
Sure. The change is that in years past, when we could just cram bodies into a classroom and teach by lecture and have the students go home and do their homework and come back and spit back the information, has changed greatly so that...
Rote, you mean?
Exactly. Now we have to apply the knowledge. We have to have a skill where we can critically think about what's the next step. We have to be able to do research, know how to learn, as opposed to learn it all at your desk. So in order to support that, we have to support more space, smaller class sizes, a better ratio teacher to student, more support in terms of guidance counselors, et cetera, all the ancillary support. And I think the town has recognized that in general in this country, that we're really trying to raise, the standards for the students, but also raise the level of support for the students. And my question to you is, knowing that, people can go back into their homes after that vote and say, yes, okay, this is going to help to cement our future, whether I'm a senior citizen, whether I'm a young family, parents with families and all. But I still have to pay that bill. I still have to pay that extra in my taxes. And I, as a parent, am worried about that. I, as a member of this town, am worried about that. And what do you think, how soon do you think administration will begin to look at the process by which you will determine what the breakdown is going to be?
We've already made the initial decision that we're going to be going with band anticipation notes. The two financing options that were presented to the town meeting members incorporated the use of band notes, be it either by the level principal or the level debt service method. The actual permanent financing is still 2 to 3 years away, because we will not be actually committing to permanent financing until we know exactly where we're going to be in relation to the SBAB financing. The second we appear on the funding list for that particular fiscal year, then we'll immediately go to the bond market. Leading up to that period of time, actually starting next Friday, we have a meeting with our bankers. We're going to continue to monitor and discuss and review the financial situation, both in this region and in the country. Anyone following the stock market has noticed over the past couple of weeks, particularly last week, there was a little bit of nervousness in the area of interest rates. That's something that we're going to be watching very carefully, because if, in fact, a low interest rate becomes available over a year and a half, 2 years from now, that may really point us to one means of financing the long-term debt. Higher rates of interest may lean towards another, or a combination of the two methods. We have engaged the services of the best financial people around working for us. Our primary advisor is going to be Fleet Securities. They do a lot of this work, and Peter Frazier is their lead contact. And we have a lot of confidence in Mr. Frazier, and we feel that with his advice and with the advice of our own internal people, the selectmen, the finance committee, we're going to come up with a financing scheme that meets the objective of funding the project while also taking into consideration the real needs that people have, not to have undue financial hardship placed upon them. A second portion of this, of course, is what we were talking about off camera prior to the start of the show with Mr. Morgan, is the whole aspect of economic development. Part of the hiring process, when I was brought to Shrewsbury, the selectmen questioned me very strongly on the issue of economic development, my position on economic development, and how I felt a municipality could, in fact, participate in the economic development process. To that end, our IDC has been reactivated. We've got 5 very active, excellent members, all of which are tied into the economic community in some manner, and we're working very hard on that, because if we can, in fact, create some expansion in our non-residential tax base, that'll help the financing of this project, other capital projects, but more importantly, an issue that was raised by one of our residents, the issue of the staffing of the facilities, which are all on budget, current year funds, which are unlike the capital funds, which are basically, in addition to the existing levy. So there's really 2 parts of this. One is looking at the financing portion of it. The other is, what can we do to generate some economic growth to expand our commercial tax base, so that when we do come time to levy that permanent financing, it will be spread out over a bigger pie, so to speak.
So when then do you go to, because there is a dramatic difference in tax rate between level principal and level debt service.
Yes.
So when do you make that decision then?
That decision will be made prior to the issuing, or the months leading up to the issuance of the permanent financing.
Okay.
And that'll be done by looking at what will the current interest rates be. For instance, our projections presented at town meeting assumed a 5.5% interest rate. Right now, bonds are going between 4.5 and 4.6.
Right.
So that 1% interest may make level principal reduction very attractive,
right,
as opposed to the level debt service. Now, another thing that might affect us is the means that which SBAB reimburses projects. Currently, they'll only reimburse based on level principal. If they were to change the regulations and agree to start reimbursing based on a level debt service, then that would make that means attractive as well. Because the difference between the two financing schemes is about $6 million.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Along the same line, could you tell us what factors go into the setting of the bond rating for this community per se? I mean, not every community has the same bond rating, obviously. So what factors do they look at when they're looking at our community in terms of long-term borrowing?
They look at financial stability, management capacity, what's the social economic breakdown of the community, what's the existing debt load, what type of overlapping debt might exist, what are some of the external factors affecting the community. For instance, the last bond rating I went through when I was with Grafton, at the time, Wyman Gordon, the aerospace industry was in a real downturn. And when I spoke to the Moody's people, virtually the entire presentation was just on how we were going to handle, if the aerospace industry continued not to recover, how we were going to handle the Wyman Gordon issue. So the analysts that are assigned to these ratings are very, very good at what they do about studying every minute aspect. So that's the type of thing that goes into the rating bureau's
and
thinking.
As a follow-up, what's the health of our community?
The health of our community, from every indication we have, is continues to be excellent. The rating bureau, I think, is going to look very favorably upon us. Part of the process of putting together the long-term financing for really the bonds that are going out this spring are going to be a presentation that we're going to be making to Moody's on the issue of our bond rating, see if it's possible to increase our current bond rating. We're on a new system now from what was previously issued, so we have to go through the rating process anyways. The other question we'll examine is whether or not we should in fact buy bond insurance, whether or not that would in fact enhance the offering, and would do a cost-benefit analysis on that to determine what's the cost of the insurance versus what's the cost or the savings of the lower interest rate. That's why, again, we've hired Fleet Securities. They're the people that are going to be walking us through that process. They do this every single day. They're in the bond market virtually 1 or 2 times a week, and they will advise us on these issues as we ramp up towards getting these issues out the door. We will have an issue going out the door this spring, because we'll need to bond permanently the $5 million open space, the $1 million on the senior center, the $2.4 million for the land for the high school, and the approximately $6.1 million for the cable TV upgrade. So this will sort of give us a little bit of a practice run for a smaller issue, getting ready for the 2 large issues that will follow in 2 and 3 years, because we'll be issuing the permanent financing on the school probably in 2 series. We'll probably be having an initial issue of $30 million, followed with the balance of the project about a year later.
If the bids come in high or things like that, what are you going to do to make sure that things stay under budget? And also operational costs for the school when it does open. How are you going to handle these problems? What are your tactics as far as dealing with these concerns?
2 good questions. I think if we wait until opening the bids to be surprised, I think we've then lost control of the project. I think we ensure that those bids are under budget starting at tonight's meeting. One of the first things we need to talk about is we need to review the budget again in detail. The architect has had some additional weeks to review their cost estimates. Earlier today I was on the phone with the architectural leader, Mike Pagano, who will be the lead person on this project, and they have some ideas that they would like to float by the committee in the way of alternates or alternate work that might be done in order to give the committee the ability to control the ultimate costs of the project. So I think in order to control costs on the project, you've got to start from the very beginning. For instance, we've had 2 meetings of the Senior Center Building Committee. We've had 2 construction meetings or project meetings already on this project, and each of those meetings we focus on what have we done not to increase the cost of that project, because part of what we need to do is build credibility, and part of that credibility is to bring the Senior Center project in on the budget, and then continue with that same very tight cost control and translate that over to the high school project. The second part of your question is about staffing, equipping, cleaning, heating, lighting. You know, we know from the building committee report that heating, lighting, cleaning of this new structure is going to cost us $1 million. I've got about 2.5 fiscal years to figure out where that's going to come from. And that starts today. You know, that starts with tonight's meeting with the Finance Committee about some of the budget reductions we're going to be making. And it also means that decisions that departments are going to have to make next year and a year after, you know, we may very well be able to afford things today, but we're not going to do them because we need to bank those resources for when this very large facility comes online. So if I preach anything from here on forward, it's going to be tight fiscal controls, only buy what you have to today, even though you may afford it, because you may need that 2, 3, 4 years from now, because we don't want to be in a town of Plymouth situation. A few years ago, they built the high school and they couldn't open it because they couldn't afford to do that. And we're not going to do that here in Shrewsbury.
When you say, though, buy only what you have to, does that imply that you are going to change the list of capital items that we've been working on over a number of years, 5 and 10 years out?
No, it means that we'll continue to work on our capital program. Each year, I filed my initial capital budget a year ago. I filed an update this year. I file annual updates of my capital budget. It means that we'll continue to do capital projects that need to be done, projects that are just good ideas, things that we'd want to have and like to have, aren't going to make it because we need to demonstrate a cost control containment here to ensure that we can do and provide those basic services that we need to provide our residents.
Right, but we will be still replacing equipment as it is aging and becoming obsolete. We did get ourselves in a pickle a few years ago by putting that on the back burner, and then we were hit hard.
For instance, the highway department asked for a new snow blower, $80,000 piece of equipment, and we're not doing that. Could we afford to do it? Yes, we could afford to do it. I have not forwarded that to the Finance Committee because it's a piece of equipment that you may use, 2 times a year or 1 time a year. And actually, the current one they haven't used in 2 or 3 years. I'll deal with the citizen complaints, and when I say I can't pick up snow in exchange for keeping the $80,000. Another thing we're doing is we're going to be establishing, if town meeting members approve, a stabilization fund. And we're going to be making an initial contribution of $250,000, moving $250,000 from free cash into the stabilization fund in order to start building up a stabilization capacity so that when the really tight years come up against our levy limit, at least we'll have some stabilization money to be used for some of those capital items.
I think we did away with that a few years ago because didn't seem to be a need for it. But
again,
it's nice to see that it.
Well, truthfully, again, we weren't building a $57 million high school. We wouldn't,
Exactly.
See, suddenly, I've become very worried about these things for the past 48 hours.
How does that money, a stabilization fund, relate to free cash, which is essentially a bank of money to be used for?
The stabilization fund requires a 2/3 appropriation to come out of the reserve fund as opposed to free cash, which is majority vote.
Okay. It requires 2/3 to create it or to take money out of it once it's established?
Majority vote to create it, 2/3 vote to take it out. So what we're sort of hoping for is by putting that money, that it's a 2/3 vote, that'll be a conscious decision of the town meeting members to take the money out of the fund.
Dan, an interesting proposal surfaced at the town meeting, which it certainly piqued my interest, and it was distributed via a flyer outside of the doors of town meeting. And basically, what it was looking at was the possibility or the feasibility of selling Shrewsbury Cable and taking those funds and maybe applying them towards the debt that we have with the high school. I just wonder what your sense is of that. Were you aware of that proposal, and are you familiar with the details about it? And what's your sense of whether that makes sense for our town or not, where we have a private cable company?
It was a proposal we were aware of. It was something that I guess has been discussed. I've been here a little year and a half, and it's something that has been discussed a couple of times, particularly in light of the deregulation issue. In fact, I think it was a question that was raised last show we did. One of the panelists raised that question. So it's something that's talked about. We have a light commission who have really managed very well the light and cable franchise for many years. And it's something that they're aware of. It's something that they discuss internally. Our light manager, Tom Josie, is an extremely dynamic individual, very aggressive in his management of the utility. And it's an option, it's an issue that they will continue to discuss and review. And at some point in time, it may be something that may be moved forward. Our current position is it's something that's under review internally of the Light Commission, as they are apt to do. And at this present time, you'll not be seeing a proposal coming forward that we sell the utility in order to pay for the other improvement. But again, it's not a dead issue. It's one of those issues that is there, and the Commission's aware of it, and it's something that I'm sure they will have something to say about as we continue to move through the deregulation process, and also the process that the Light Commission is using, moving towards market rates.
Speaking of that, as you mentioned, Tom Josie and his committee there, they have done a very good job. The only thing that concerns me is that something of that nature, if it were to take place, I think might have an adverse effect about the quality of programming from this studio and the studio itself. I think that should be a consideration as well.
I'd be concerned we'd lose control.
That's right.
Basically. I do hear the complaints of the surrounding communities who have the large conglomerate controlling their access, and it's in terms of pricing and in terms of the quality of the programs and the local programming. I think that we'd lose control. So personally, I would be very concerned about that.
I think you have to be careful there, though, because it is in essence a time where the town has decided to run a business that you would typically find as a private enterprise. And I think part of Mr. Hagelin's point, and I don't really take a position either way on this, was that from an industry perspective, the industry is undergoing a consolidation, and that from a value standpoint, strictly as a business decision, now might be the time to evaluate whether or not we can continue to operate. It's funny because it's completely separate from the light, but the industries are, concurrently in upheaval, and our service really is comparable presently to a study we did said our service is comparable to other towns.
I think our service is better.
Much better.
And
Okay.
you weren't here for the initial battle when we first dealt with the decision about, like Eileen and I were, getting old, Eileen,
Right.
about whether or not we should go into this business of cable. And this isn't new that it's a private enterprise. It was a private enterprise then. And let me tell you something. The for-profit cable companies spent a lot of money to try to convince this community that we should not get into the cable business, that it was going to be bad for the town. And the reason they wanted us to be convinced of that is because they wanted to make the profits, and instead the profits go to our own community. We're also into the telephone long-distance business now.
Right. And we're about to get into the internet
I think
business.
the internet. I think it's wonderful that this community has the vision to offer some of these programs, and the business of selling one of our finest assets is akin to saying, well, my kid's got to go to college now, I better sell my house, because after all, I can go rent a small apartment somewhere.
Right.
And to think about paying for a one-time construction issue by selling an asset that you will always have is very short-sighted, I think.
Definitely.
As you can see, it's an issue.
It's an emotional issue.
Sure is.
And again, the Light Commission, and this is what they do. And that's the one department that we run most like a business. And that's the reason why it's been successful, because it is run as a business.
And we've got to wrap it up. I'm sorry. I want to thank you for your views. I want to thank this panel
So time flies when you're having
for
fun.
your questions. It's wonderful. And thanks for joining me. To our viewers, thanks for joining us. See you the next time.